welcome to Uncle Torvald's Story Time. This is a continuation of the Good Old Days series of stories, and it is based upon my experiences from living in the current Middle Ages as a member of the Society For Creative Anachronism. I feel as a storyteller, poet, singer, songwriter that it is at least partially a responsibility on my part to record the things that I have experienced and seen. And so these stories are going to revolve around me a bit. Obviously I have to be there in order to witness it, so not entirely an ego stroke here. So we often refer to these as "no shit, there I was" stories because we'll start it with "no shit, there I was." Kind of the equivalent of "once upon a time." Now this story is kind of a long one. It takes place over about a 3-year period. And it's centered around the West Ontario War, which takes place on the 4th of July weekend. It's an inter-kingdom war between the Kingdom of the West, which is Northern California, most of Nevada and Alaska, versus the Kingdom of Ontario, which is Oregon, Washington, and Vancouver, British Columbia, so the Pacific Northwest, basically. And we alternate hosting it. One year it'll be hosted up in their kingdom, the next year it'll be hosted down in our kingdom. And it was always one of my funnest wars. I really enjoyed going up there and fighting with the people in Ontario. Now, this particular one took place in Ontario, up in Eugene, Oregon, and it was at a reservoir there, which was really kind of nice because after you were done fighting, you can go jump in the reservoir and cool down and clean up a bit. But for some reason, this particular year, very few fighters from the West Kingdom made it up there. We only had about 33 to 38 total Western heavy fighters there. And that was against more than 120 Ontarian warriors. So we were very significantly outnumbered. On top of that, for some reason, none of the current royalty of the West Kingdom made it there. The King and Queen weren't there, the Crown Prince and Princess weren't there, the Prince of the Mists, the Prince of Sinagua, the Prince of Huerta, none of them were there. And so the command of the West Kingdom Army was given to Duke James Greyhelm. Now, Duke James, obviously in the SCA, to be a duke, you have to have been king twice or more. So he had a lot of experience. He was a good field commander, and so he was chosen to lead the army. And he also commanded the center line of the army. Now, the left flank was commanded by the unit Griffin's Guard, which was one of the premier heavy infantry units of essentially the entire West Coast. And then I was given command of the right flank, with basically all the leftovers that we could put together. There were only 3 members of the Barony of Inholt that had made it up there, myself and 2 of my good friends, Michael the Farlander and Wilfred. And then I had a guy from Emerald Towers, and I had maybe a guy from Ravenshore, and a couple from Golden Rivers. I don't remember the exact mix, but we were just a throw-together unit. Now, the good news was, though, that all of us had enough experience in general to be able to work fairly well as a unit. Now, normally, in these types of situations, when you've got such an imbalance of forces, you might fight 1 or 2 battles as native forces, meaning only kingdom versus kingdom. But then after that, typically one side or the other will give the other side, the one that's really low, some of their forces to even things out. I mean, we're actually out there just to have fun. And so it just makes sense to even up the forces. Well, for whatever reason, this particular war, we were fighting native forces the entire day. So, again, we were vastly outnumbered. However, we did still manage to win 2 battles. The Kingdom of the West won one of the castle battles, the one where we were inside the castle, and that was because it was a timed battle. Basically, the opposing force had to break into the castle and kill us all before a certain amount of time elapsed which would then signify that a relief force had made it to break the siege. And we managed to hold them off. More or less, by the time the battle scenario ended, had run out of time, there were only 3 of us left inside the castle. There was myself, there was Theodoric of Skane, and I believe there was a member of Griffin's Guard with us. I don't recall exactly who it was. It might have been Drew Fortescue, but I could be mistaken. And the only reason that we were alive is there was enough dead bodies of the West Kingdom at the gate. They couldn't get the gate open. They weren't allowed to climb over the wall to get in. And the 3 of us were standing with our backs against the tower inside the castle, and their spears could barely reach us from the outside wall, and they were doing a major tap dance on our shields trying to kill us before time ran out. And we managed to stay buttoned up tight enough that we survived. And then we won one of the bridge battles. Now, in SCA warfare, bridges are signified by taking 2 rows of hay bales and you fight between the hay bales. Now, the nice thing about bridge battles is it really can help to eliminate some of the advantage of numbers, because only so many people can get at you at a time. Think Battle of Thermopylae. Okay, so we managed to bottle them up, stay tight, and we managed in one instance at least of the bridge battles to kill the entire Ontiran army and still survive. However, we did lose the war. So at the end of the day, we're back in camp, we're sitting around the campfire, and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, how do we come up with a story about how we managed to win the war and what would give us an excuse for next year's war? You know, I mean, this is all a story. We're not really saying we did win. We're just coming up with a humorous story so that we've got an excuse to fight next year. Now, I'm crediting Duke James for having come up with the general idea, embellished by a few others, and then I took it and ran with it. So the whole next year, down in the West Kingdom, I performed a verse song that I had written about the war, telling how we had won it, and I performed it all over the kingdom the entire year. The idea being really to just simply drum up support to make sure that we got more people up to it the following year, so we weren't so badly outnumbered. Plus, we were hosting that coming year. It was going to be held in Crescent City, out on the coast, right up on the border between California and Oregon. Beautiful site. Right up on the shoreline. The ocean was a short distance away. Absolutely wonderful. So at any rate, I'm going to perform for you the verse song that I wrote. And now, the kicker to this, well, actually, let me perform the story first and then I'll tell you the kicker. Now, I've fought many wars through the years. Caid, Aidenbelt, Callantyr, laid them all out, sword and axe and halberd. Outlands, Middle Realm, Eastern too, it didn't make a difference, I ran them through, but I never had a reason to stop and laugh till Ontier. Well, we stood in the woods that bright spring morn, our swords are out and our armor on. Out in the plains stood our foes from Ontier. There were 5 of them to every one of us, and I could hear my friends all starting to fuss that if someone didn't think of something quick, we all were goners. Well, Duke James started thinking, and he said, now then, a little ways back there were some shepherd men, a little bit of bribing, we'd get them all to help us. See, we all knew how the saying goes when the women are scarce in the lands of snow, that it isn't a dog, it's a man's best friend at all. So with a couple of cases of Henry's best, we soon had all the shepherds at rest and a herd of those fleecy critters out before us. Then back to the forest we went again with our secret weapon and drunken herdsmen, where our foes were waiting for us to come out and die. Well, with a signal of now from our Duke James, we pushed those sheep out onto the plain with a battle cry, bah! They charged the Ontier line. And I'll remember that sight till my dying day, the looks of shock, surprise, and dismay that struck the Ontier line from end to end. Now, while I was laughing upon the ground at the sight of those men all running around just trying to catch their soft and woolly friends, Duke James and the rest snuck around the inn where Steingrim stood, grinning at his men, calmly laid him upon the ground and ran. Well, that's the story. Take it or leave it. My Vinhold buddies, they all believe it. So do the rest of the souls who saw it all. But I'll remember that sight, my friends, I say, of the full moon showing during the light of day, and I'll raise a tankard to shepherds, one and all. So I performed this many times down in the West Kingdom, and what I didn't know was that at a particular event, someone who was visiting from Antir had brought a tape recorder to the various bardic circles that they were attending to take back up to Antir. They had it in a basket with a cover over it so you couldn't see it, and when they would come to a bardic circle, they would sit down, put the basket next to them, reach in and hit the record button. So they recorded my performance, and they took it back to Antir, and they started sharing it around the kingdom. So the next year, we get up to Crescent City for the war. The sides are a bit more even. Antir still outnumbered us, but it wasn't really bad. We had around 90 and they had about 120 again. So sides were not so off that we had to even things up. We had a great war. However, at the beginning of the war, there was a short court where the kings stand up and talk to everybody there. And then after court, they pulled all the fighters together in what we call a listen up. They go over the rules, they discuss what the scenarios are going to be, what the battles are going to be, what the rules for the battles are going to be, and so on. And at one point during the listen up, the king of Antir stops and said, "Now who wrote that sheep song?" And all of my friends from Vinhold took a step back and pointed at me. And so he looks over and he goes, "Guys, that's him." I spent that entire war running for my life. Not simply because of the people trying to get me because of the sheep song, but also because the previous year, one of the major knights of Antir had been in command of one of the flanks of the Antiran army. And during the first two they weren't really open field battles, they were called shore battles. What a shore battle is, we have a line designated, one side is standing on the shore, they stay up on their feet, and then the ones that are coming up have to be on their knees until they cross that line. And once they cross that line, then they can stand up. So obviously, our goal is to keep them on their knees. Now this actually was also an attempt to try and make up a bit for the numbers. And so in the first battle, they were not allowing archery. It was only heavy weapon fighting. And so, at least on my flank, what I had told our troops to do was that all of the men using shields to stand about 5 or 6 feet back from the edge of the shoreline initially. And all of us who were using pikes, which were the very long 9-foot spears, to stand on the edge of the shoreline. Since we didn't have to worry about anything being thrown at us, I wanted to give all of our spearmen some extra range on the incoming fighters. And so I'm having a little trouble at the moment remembering the name of this particular knight. Hopefully it'll come to me before this story is over. And so at any rate, as they were advancing on their knees, I noticed a little bit of a gap opening up in the enemy shield wall as it approached, and just as it got into range, I took a step sideways, fired a shot, and hit this guy right in the ribs, killing him. Now this was the commander of that flank, okay? And it was the first blow on our side of the line after the battle had started. So I took him out right off the bat. And after that, we ended up losing the battle. The numbers were just too much to overcome. We couldn't hold the shoreline. So then we line up, we do the same thing over again. Now this time they're allowing combat archery and missile weapons. And so now I have our shieldmen up on the edge of the line, spearmen behind, to to protect them from the missile fire. And as they are advancing, I'm looking again for that unit commander, and this time him and his shield man are staying well put together. They got their shields overlapping so there's no gaps. However, the guy just to the left, my right, of his shield man had moved a little bit and had a gap, and so I took a quick step over in between two of my guys, fired sideways, hit his shield man in the ribs, and as his shield man died and fell over, that left him exposed, and I fired again and I hit him right in the side, and blam, took him out, down he goes. So the first two battles of the war, I take out the commander of the left flank of the opposing forces and one of the major knights of that kingdom. Actually, the army of Vinhald, the three of us that made it up there, myself, Michael, and Wolfred, we actually accounted for taking this particular knight, who was an excellent knight, don't get me wrong. He was one of the best in their kingdom and actually became a duke at one point. But the three of us took him out of 5 of the battles that day. Michael the Farlander got him twice in the forest battles, and then Wolfred got him in one of the open field battles. So we accounted for taking him out. I'm thinking his name was Torgal. I'm almost positive it was Sir Torgal. So at any rate, getting back now to the current year in Crescent City, not only have I been singled out because of my sheep song, as we're lining up out on for the open field, I'm on the right flank with the army of Vinhald, and this time most of us had made it up. There was about a good 10 or 12 of us up there that year. And I'm standing out on one of the ends with my spear, my pike. Now you have to understand that my armor is fairly distinctive. I wear hardened leather scale armor, and there's only a few people in our kingdom that wear scale armor. And so as I'm standing there on the end waiting for the Leon to be called, I'm still standing out on the end so I don't have any shields in front of me. When they call the Leon, I'll step back over behind for the screening from the combat archery. But as I'm standing there out in the open, from the unit opposite us, I hear this bellow, "I remember you!" And I kind of look side to side and go like this, and he says, "Yeah, you, in the scale with the spear, I remember you!" And there is Sir Torgal, with his unit right opposite ours. Now, the only good thing I had going for me right now was the fact that this particular battle, we had a river running through the middle of the battlefield, and the reason that Vinhald was up on the right flank is that was where the ford was. The ford in a river has to be crossed on your knees. Bridges can be crossed on your feet. We were in charge of protecting the ford. Now, the thing is, though, the river only extended a certain distance to either side, and it was considered that there was an area out on the far end that you were allowed to go around, but you really had to move out a long distance to get around the end of the river. So when they yelled "lay on," Vinhald moved up to the edge of the ford, and the other unit moved up to the edge of the ford. Neither one of us wanted to get in the water because that would give the other side an advantage on us. So both sides were just kind of staring at each other for a while, and what I hadn't seen was Sir Torgal taking off at a dead run to his left out into the woods because he wanted to get around the end of the river. And he did. And we didn't notice it first. And then all of a sudden I hear this crashing sound, and I look to my right, and here comes Torgal. And he's running right down the back of the line, right straight at me, and I whip my spear over and miss, and he plows and slams and beats me right into the ground. At which point he dies. The rest of our guys jump on him and kill him. The thing is now, though, that not only do I have the army guys looking out for me, I've got Torgal. I swear, that entire war, I could not turn around and either not have a group of people jumping on top of me or Torgal jumping on top of me. However, it was all in fun. I I look at it this way, if I had that many people focused on killing me, that meant they weren't out there doing something else. I always like this idea that me as an unbelted fighter can tie up several people for a certain amount of time, because that gives my guys a numbers advantage somewhere else. And so all of the times that I was being chased down by the fighters, I'm giving my side a numeric advantage. And every time Torgal is focused on getting to me, I'm taking an extremely talented, high-skill fighter out of the fight as well, as he's focused on getting me. Now, something of a punchline to this story came up, that a bunch of my friends had gone to an adult shop in San Francisco, and they had picked up a bunch of inflatable love yous. Inflatable sheep, female anatomy, yes, 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 they're exactly what you're thinking. And they inflated them and taped them to the end of their spears for the first few battles of this war, emphasizing my story song. And to add to this, going on now to the third year, we were once again fighting at Crescent City. There was a problem with getting a site up in Oregon, so 2 years in a row we fought at Crescent City. And the guys had once again brought up some of those inflatable love yous, but this time, instead of taping them to the ends of their spears, they had brought a bottle of helium. And they filled them up with this. Now, the only problem was that the love yous plastic was so heavy they couldn't actually float up in the air. Instead, they just kind of drifted along on top of the ground, pushed by the breeze like a tumbleweed. And here we are in the morning, Saturday morning, getting ready for the war, and we've got this breeze coming in off of the ocean and over the sand dunes, and drifting along on top of it are the love views, and somebody turns and yells, "Look, Ontiran Valkyries!" And I spent the rest of that war running away from Ontirans the whole day. Well, that's my story. Take it or leave it. My Finn old buddies, they all believe it. And so do the rest of the souls who saw it all. Oh, the good old days.